Hello, friends. One of our traditions here at the Salo Happy Home is on Sundays when we're just hanging around the house and putzing around and different things, we put on a show, a YouTube show called Slap Tam. The host is named Callan. It's a fantastic show. I love this show. And while it's running in the background, we'll be doing things. We'll be debunking and seeing all the crazy stuff they have. And they've got just wild videos. Some of them are obviously you can debunk, and others are just like, oh my God, that poor person. I hope they survive that. Anyway, one of the episodes that was running while I was making Douglas's Sunday supper, he's getting stuffed green peppers today. Stuffed peppers, he loves those things, so he can have them. I got him. I make whatever he wants, I give him. So he wanted stuffed peppers? Okay. And I was listening to this story. They were talking about one of the segments on this Slap Tam video that's on right now, is a group of individuals in Brazil had an experience with, they were outside having like a bonfire, and just having a good time, like a party, and they had a luminescent human shape, large human shape, appear on a path near the place where they were socializing. And they said that as they became more and more interested in it and viewing it, it seemed to them that they almost kind of lost touch with where they were and that they were gently lifted off the ground. Now, they believe it's tied to a particular Brazilian tradition I'm not familiar with, but it reminded me of Douglas's E.T. experience when he was a child. I've known many people that are abductees, that are experiencers, and I am one of them. And I realized that about four or 5 years ago, I put out a video on YouTube about my ET experiences. That video's gone. I can't find that anywhere. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place. I don't know. So I thought, well, I'm going to put out a video and I'm going to talk about our ET experience, because just by sheer coincidence, I happen to be wearing my favorite Putz Around the House hoodie. So, with that being said, Douglas's experience, when Douglas was about 9 years old, he was standing at the bus stop in Minnesota with other children his age, 3rd, 4th, 5th grader kind of thing, and they were waiting at the bus stop in a crisp early morning in Minnesota, waiting to catch the bus to go to school. And as they were milling about and chit-chatting and doing what children do while they're waiting for the bus, a bright luminescent object appeared out of the sky and came silently right above the children. And they all got quiet and they all saw it, and this object, whatever it was, whatever their intention was, started to lift the children off the ground. And as the children were being lifted off the ground, as soon as the school bus rounded the corner at the end of the street and started down the street, they all dropped back down to the ground, and the bright light saucer thing disappeared. None of the children talked about what happened. It's kind of like they knew something had happened, but they didn't want to talk about it. So they never did. And they went about their business in their lives. But there are some of us who, like me, I talk about everything. And I have a long and dramatic history with ETs, as well as ghosts. I'm a psychic medium. I've been talking to dead people since I was 4. My mother wrote letters to people because she had a daughter that was talking to dead people and could read Bibles and whatnot at 4 years old. I couldn't tell you what half of them said, but I could pronounce the words and understand them. I just didn't have the comprehension at 4. And ghosts that were teaching me how to do things like handwriting and spelling and different things. And it actually started causing problems in school when I was in 3rd grade. In fact, the teachers called my parents and told them to stop teaching me cursive writing and different things at home, because it was messing with where I was supposed to be with the rest of the kids. And they said they aren't doing any such thing. Come to find out, it was this ghost that was in our house. Anyway, so I've been dealing with paranormal my whole life. ETs are no exception. Where we lived at that time in Hennepin County, Minnesota, for a number of years when I was a very small child, my parents moved to very rural farmhouse in the middle of no friggin' where in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. The house was ancient. I mean, like, it had been deemed a historical property at some point because it was so friggin' old. Nasty, ugly, old, tiny place, but it was ours, right? And it was on like a half acre of land or something like that, surrounded by all these woods and cornfields and whatnot. There was a couple of other houses that were on the other sides of the cornfields, but it was one dirt road in and out. We were at the end of that dirt road. It was pretty crazy. And we would see objects in the sky all the time. You name it. The cigar-shaped ones, triangular-shaped ones, saucer-shaped ones, luminescent orbs and blobs, ball lightning, rattling of the house. These were experiences that my entire family experienced. I remember a couple of times things happening. My dad was visibly shook up. He'd run into the house after coming home from a shift, and he'd be locking the doors, and he'd be shook up because he saw something, ETs or, running around the yard or something in the sky. My, sisters and mom and I, visibly shook up by ball lightning and different things that we saw. So, and I believe that the other homes, the other families in that area had also had experiences too, but that was left to the adults to deal with, so we didn't know what was going on. As I grew older, I started having my own ET experiences. In the early 90s, with the home that I lived in on the East Coast, I moved in for a while and lived in Rhode Island, and lying in bed, I hear a rattling noise of some sort, and right across from the foot of the bed there was a dresser that was under a small window that was, up at the top of the wall. And it had those old-fashioned, wide, like a mini blind, only they were wide slats. And it was slapping itself. Open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. It was nuts. And the next thing I know, it's doing this bit. And so I get up and I grab the mini blind or the blind, and I look underneath it, and there's this bright, blinding light hovering above the roof of the house behind us. And the whole place started shaking. And I'm going to wake up my boyfriend. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And he wakes up, and he's like, what the hell is going on? I mean, he could see the shaking and the carrying on. And he experienced it too. And I'd say it lasted a couple of minutes, and then it just stopped. First the rattling and the movement of the shade, then the light went away. I see routine things in the sky all the time that cannot be explained, different types of anomalies. But in the early 2000s, I moved briefly to northern Michigan. Not the UP, that's a whole different thing, but northern Michigan. And the home I lived in was directly on the beach of Lake Michigan. As in our backyard was beach sand that went down into the water. It was very cold, very unforgiving in the wintertime, excessive amounts of snow and wind and cold. It was just a really miserable place to be in the wintertime. But I started having these experiences there. And the first experience I had was one afternoon, my roommate, she was gone. She was at work or doing whatever she was doing, and I was home alone getting ready for work. And it was in kind of the late afternoon, the late morning, early afternoon. I was getting ready to go to work. I was in the bathroom, and all of a sudden I hear music blasting through the home. Strange, because it was coming from this old boombox I had. Now, this was in 2002, and the boombox I had was from the 90s. It was like a dozen years old. It had 4 double D batteries in it, or 4 D batteries in it, and a cord, you could plug it into the wall. And it was full of paint from different painting projects that we had, and it was dented and dinged because that thing had been with me for so many years. And it was blasting, and it was in the living room sitting on the fireplace mantle, so I turned it off. I went back into the bathroom to continue getting ready, and some seconds later, it starts blasting again. So I go out, and I'm like, all right, I don't know what's going on here. What is this, ghost? What's up, ghosts? Assuming it was spiritual. And I unplugged it. I made sure it was turned off, and I unplugged it, and I went back into the bathroom and continued, and some seconds later, it started blasting again. Now, this was before there was like Bluetooth stuff going on. This was an ancient boombox that you see in movies from the 80s. No internet technology available at the time, and that thing wouldn't have had it anyway. So I went out, I turned it off again, I pulled the batteries out. Now, the switch is off, the batteries are out, the plug is out of the socket and lying on the floor. I go back in the bathroom, and I'll be damned if that thing didn't start playing music, get blasting music. So I go back out, and the whole place is just electrified. Like, I was electrified. It was like snaps of static electricity throughout just heavy. The whole air was full of it, and it was crazy. And I turned to look around to see what was happening, if I could see anything. And there in the dining room window was a figure. It was a black, shiny, almost melty, rubbery figure. Long, thin, very tall enough that it had to lean down to look into the window. And when I looked at him and he looked at me, he tore out of there. He spun around and ran down toward the water. Now, this was in the fall, and there was a big pile of leaves that had piled up outside that window. And the leaves were all the way down the sidewalk till you got to the sand. And then it went. And I ran outside, and those leaves were in this bizarre swirl. Like, you couldn't have made that swirl yourself. You couldn't have made that swirl yourself. It was really bizarre. And the pathway, the sidewalk had been cleared of the leaves. Like, they were all like waves around him. And the path that he took was clear. All the way down to the sand, you could see the line all the way into the water. Another night when I lived there, I had another experience. And this experience, I woke up because I woke up, something, you just wake up sometimes, you don't know why. And I went outside because the house we didn't have a deck, but we had like a catwalk that wrapped around 3 sides of the house. So you could go out from the garden room and go out there and stand there and have a cigarette or coffee or, whatever, put a chair out there if you wanted, and view the water. And I looked up and I noticed that the sky was unusually dark. It was like exceptionally dark, and the stars were just incredibly brilliant and vibrant. And the sky, the stars started twinkling, like cartoon twinkling, exaggerated. And then they became bigger and closer, and they started to elongate until they actually started to look like humans made of mercury that were just diving and somersaulting and swimming through the sky. And they kept coming closer and closer and closer to me until one of them finally made his way to this catwalk and was standing right next to me. And he was like a human made of mercury, and he was wearing this goofy ass hat that looked like a metal salad bowl on his head. And we looked at each other for a brief moment, and then he turned and he dove back up into the sky, and they all started to get smaller and disappear, and I went back to bed. There was another incident at this place. This was my most terrifying, I was lying in bed. It was in the middle of winter on the beach to Lake Michigan. And all of the windows in the room were sealed up, closed. There was no drafts. The shades were bamboo shades, so they were weighted and heavy. And I'm lying in bed and I hear a noise. And I wake up and I look around, and those bamboo shades, they're not swaying like a breeze, because there was no breeze. I checked. No open windows, nothing. But they were going like this, and they were getting more and more intense, more and more intense. And then a light started to come through. A pin of light started to come through those bamboo shades. And it got brighter and brighter and brighter and wider, and the shades were just slapping and slapping and slapping harder and harder and harder. And I thought, wow, there's a helicopter out there. You know, Black Ops choppers. I'm like, damn, I wonder what's going on, right? And all of a sudden, I was paralyzed. I could not move. I couldn't blink. I couldn't breathe. I was completely paralyzed, every bit of me except my mind. And that beam came in, and it went down my body and up my body, and each time it did, it would stop at my liver, and then it would move on and come back. And after it did that a few times, the light lifted, started getting smaller and going away and away and away, and then the bamboo shades started to get slower and slower and slower, and eventually everything of that stopped, and a scream came out of my mouth. I was absolutely, utterly terrified. I jump up, I run into the bathroom. I'm terrified, I'm in panic. And on my face, I had a burn. And the burn had 3 blisters, 1, 2, 3. So I called up a friend in the middle of the night, and he came over and he comforted me and he stayed with me and he said, "Oh my God, that's an abduction. You've been probed by an ET." So with that, it is terrifying. It is something that you cannot control or avoid. If it's going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you. It may happen to you once. You may be a multiple abductee. It's a very serious issue. And I don't know why they stopped at my liver, except that I had suspected someone in my life had been sprinkling arsenic on my food, because I was deathly sick, like close to dying sick, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I think they should have looked a little closer, but nonetheless, I think that because arsenic would, attack your liver, I wonder if the ETs were actually looking out for me and not trying to harm me in any way. So I've had ET experiences. I don't anticipate that I may have any more, but you never know. When you dabble in the paranormal, you're opening up doorways to everything unseen, dead and undead, unknown, and alien. And you have to accept accountability for your actions. You're going to get yourself into trouble one of these days if you continue to do that. But I accept that responsibility because I like the scientific aspect of paranormal. I want to find these things to be true or not. So that's our ET experience. I wanted to share that with you. And Douglas is out there. He's doing his thing with his his blower that he just fixed. He's trending on YouTube. He's got a lot of video people looking at him already. Yeah. Good job. Because he's a real American man. And real American men get abducted. Among other things. So, yeah, that's our ET story. And that's enough for today. I love you all. Do good, be good, and try to be less stupid.